little puddle painting, about 5.5 by 7.5, with it, which is what, 1/16 of a piece of watercolor paper. So my first step is to get a plan down onto tracing paper. So I'm going to first get the size of the paper that I want to work with from my plan, and my ruler is a little large, can't seem to find my other ones. So first off, I want the size of the paper, and I'm using a Sharpie because it shows up better with what I'm going to do next. Right, then I'm going to get my painting out, and this is going to be my format picture. Let me zoom in a little so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm essentially going to use this photographic reference, and I'm just going to show you how you can use photographic reference and sort of trace up a design without being verbatim, save you some time. So I'm first going to tape the photo down so it doesn't scoot around on me. And now I'm going to adjust my format over the top of it. So this is too small for my format, so I gotta make adjustments. So do I want more of the sidewalk? Do I want more of the background? I think I'll put the edge of the sidewalk over there, so I'll kind of trace that around. And the next thing I want to do is kind of account for the taped edge that's going to be on my watercolor paper. So I'm going to come in 1/4 of an inch or so on either edge. On all edges. And I'm not being too precise, because I'm not too precise when I tape either. But I want to make sure I account for it, because it'll change the format to a 5 by 7 instead of a 5.5 by 7.5, which is critical for matting. Okay, so we'll give more background. I want the edge of the sidewalk to show. Maybe I'll do it like that, because I'm going to put rocks over here. So now I want to kind of get the edge, the angles, without having to think of it. There's a little 2 quail, and I probably want to make my quail bigger than they are, so I'm going to kind of use the edge but extend it out a little bit, make it taller and bigger, just to make my subject just a little smaller or taller. And then I have the little chicks that are kind of almost not able to see, and they have a little tiny little plume. I really like this one's little legs in movement, and then I want to make sure I capture the shadows on everything. So I have to think about making that all bigger as well. And so this little guy, his little shadow will be there. It doesn't quite extend to the little leg that he has in the air, and this one's kind of running to catch up. All right, and then I want to put the sidewalk over there, and I want to extend it out to the edge. So I'm going to put some rocks and other flowers and stuff over on this side. You can kind of see it starting on the edge here. And then I'm going to extend some flower. I don't want to put too much emphasis on the flowers because it'll take away from my birds, but essentially there's some shadows underneath this full foliage over here. So I want to get the sense of that, and then I want to extend the bushes up, and then maybe I'll have a street sidewalk out there, and this will be rocks and things. So I like this photo because it has nice diagonals and nice big shapes where we can summarize quite a bit. All right, but I have to make up stuff because my photograph is smaller than my format. Okay, so that's all I want to do to get ready for the painting process. Now I'm going to trace up this drawing to my watercolor paper. So the way I'm going to do that is to go to a light box, which I won't be able to show you on camera, but essentially I'm only going to trace up those lines, and I probably will leave some of those out. I may take this flower yellow off the edge and make it more immediate there. Okay. Okay, so now I have my drawing traced onto my paper with pencil, and I'm using a pretty soft lead so that my lines are darker than they normally would be, because I want you to be able to see it. And now I'm going to tape the edge, and I'm using artist tape this time. And I've been frustrated with artist tape, but if it says artist tape on the inside like that, that's the brand that you want to look for. A lot of tape claims to be artist tape, but this is the artist tape that has the trademark. And I found that this is the best. It's pretty expensive, but it has a good grip, but it still will come off easily. And so make sure you overlap the corners of the tape so the water can't get underneath at the corners, can't get underneath the tape, and then get a really good seal on the tape. So pull it out and measure so you don't waste a lot of tape. Measure first, and remember I counted for the taped edge in my plan. So I like to overlap about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm not always really accurate with my taping, so I want to plan for that in my design. So there's a little bit of fuzz on that side. I'm going to just turn it over so that fuzz doesn't interfere with my painting. Okay, so I'm going to get a really good seal on the tape, and we're going to do a process that I call puddle painting. So I'm going to have to zoom out again so you can see everything over here. So I'm working with my normal setup. I'm right-handed, so I have my water to the top and to the right. I have my palette to my right, and I'm working with the palette that I used for the last painting. So before I start the new painting, I'm going to clean out my mixing areas from the previous painting. So then in between my palette and my painting, I want to have something to control the water level on my brush. And that towel's getting pretty well dirty, so I'm bringing out a new clean towel. You can see I have used it a lot. And then I have clean water, and I'll try to keep cleaning my brush in the same bin of water. So 2 bins of water is usually good. And I have used my pipette with clean water to get my 3 colors that I'm going to use juicy before I start. So I've kind of debating if I want to do quinacridone coral or Pierrot red, but I'm going to use the warm yellow and the warm blue so I can get some nice gray tones for the bird. But I want a warm red and a warm blue to get sort of brownish violets. So for puddle painting, what we do is we work a section at a time. So for this section, I want this to be grays, like in rocks. So I'm going to put the water down in a big puddle. Hopefully you can see that. I'll zoom in just a minute. And you really want the paint or the water to really puddle up. That's why I call it puddle painting. And then I'm going to take some pretty strong pigment comparatively because we have so much water. And then I'm going to try to just touch the surface of the puddle and let that paint sort of swim around in the puddle. I'm going to do the same thing with red. So I guess I'm going with the Pyrrole red in my case. You may have Pyrrole scarlet, something that skews a little more orange than, again, trying to just hit that surface. Because I know when I combine these two colors, it grays down quickly because of the temperatures of the two primaries. But in order to get it to be completely gray, I also need to bring in that third primary, which is in this case a warm yellow. And I want them to swirl around in the puddle and mix on the paper rather than on the palette, so that I get a beautiful gray that has lots of nice components to it. So I'm just going to go back and forth until I'm happy with my gray tone and how dark it is. Now it's going to dry back quite a bit lighter because this is a lot of water in the puddle. Okay, now I can go and work. Now I'm only going to use those three colors throughout the painting. Now I can work in a different area. I can't work adjacent because this is wet and it'll pollute the area. So I'm going to get some clean water and I'll go way over here and do this foliage, bush, whatever it is. And I'm going to go ahead and do the shadow around that chick as well at the same time. So I've got the puddle. I really want to make sure there's a lot of water on there. I should protect my photograph because water damages that surface. And I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I want to know what combination. Well, all three colors, but I want it to skew more to the green side than the gray side. So I'll put the blue in first, so that's a component of green. All right, so I've got this puddle started and I've got the nice blue shade down, so I'm going to skim the surface with my yellow to turn it green. But you can see that's pretty dark, or pretty bright green compared to what you see in the photograph. So most of the greens that we see out there are more olive green and bluish tones. So I'm just going to drop some more blue in on top of that yellow so it's darker. And then I'm going to put some of the red in. Now red will take over, so you want to be careful with getting too much and try to really stay on top of the surface. I'm going to put more red in the shadow because that shadow is more dirt than foliage color, so I might do more red and blue in the shadow. And then I'll just gently mix it around using the side of my brush, trying not to actually touch the paper at all, and get a base for my foliage over here. And try not to get any gaps to be too regimented in their shapes and separations. And I'll leave a bright spot there, a light hole where you see these two leaves come down. Okay, so I've got that area, which I quite like. There's some dead stuff in there, so that red helps the dead stuff make the live stuff look alive. I think I will put a little more blue just to darken it over there. I'm actually using rough paper, so you're probably going to see a little more texture. So on this side I want it to skew more blue, and maybe as it comes into the light get a little brighter with the yellow. So I'm using New Gamboge, Pyrrole red, those are Daniel Smith colors, and then I'm using Holbein Ultramarine Light for my blue. Now that's pretty dark right there, those leaves hanging down, so I'm going to put a little more red in there. And then a lot of this is shadow surrounding there. Okay, so I'll leave that alone and not overdo too much. Now I can't do an adjacent subject or a section unless I dry it off. So maybe I'll start working the bird. I'm not going to worry about those highlights. I'm going to scratch them back at the end. So I want to get the overall gray-blue tone of the big bird. Mama bird, I think, although it's kind of looking like a male bird. I swear it was mama though when I took the picture. So again, I'm going to puddle up with clean water and start with the blue tone. I'm not going to worry about those white bits. I'll scratch them back at the end. So overall bluish, and then I'll bring in a little bit of the red to gray it down. Not too much because red kind of takes over. And then just blend it down just so I get more of a gray tone. So a warm red and a warm blue make a very grayish, brownish purple. I particularly like the combination of the cool blue and the warm red, but I want to have the warm red. Any blue with a warm red will be a gray tone, but I want it to be a little more pretty violet gray. If I wanted to, I kind of got that shape wrong, so let's see if I'll make him a little bigger. His head comes up to a crown more, and then I haven't puddled this, so this will be quite dark. I'm going to try to do it in one stroke to get that plume. And then where the beak is, it starts to turn a little more on the orange side. So let's go ahead and put a little yellow, especially in the belly area there, and just get that first tone of color. Try not to tighten up when you get to the bird. Keep it all the same quality of painting. And there's quite a shadow that comes down underneath where the sun can't reach quite. Okay, so that's the bird. And I can go over here to this section. I want to get my brush really clean because I'm going to go with yellow to start with. So I'm going to puddle up, and I want these yellow flowers. So I'm going to get pretty strong yellow and puddle that into there pretty strongly. And then just a touch of red, pure red, not with, and I'll touch a little in and let it swim around, but mostly yellow. Take a little bit of that water away and add a little stronger yellow. Then over here, these are pink flowers. So I'm going to stay with the warm tones, but I'm going to use a lighter, more corally color to sort of hint at this puddle. Oops, I forgot to put the puddle in. And I made a connection there on accident. So those are the pink flowers. And let's go ahead and just put some up in there. Okay, I can work at this little chick because this little chick is isolated from everybody else. So I did notice that I have missed that line on the back of the quail. So just for planning purposes, I'm going to go ahead and extend that. Okay, so with the chicks, I want to puddle first again, but I want to make them more yellow, gray, then blue-gray. So I'm gonna put the yellow down first, put a little red in, let it swim around, and then just a tiny bit of blue, especially on the butt end of this one. And just gray it a little bit, but I want it to skew orange more than Mama Bird. So this is just the first layer of color. Okay, and then I can't do this one yet because it is connected to a wet area. So I'm going to paint that shadow. I went in without puddling so it could stay stronger, and it's going to be a little bit bigger, and I can go ahead and put the shadow under this chick over here so it comes around his little running leg, ends right there, and Mama Bird kind of puddles behind as well. We can sort of see her talons or feet there in front of shadow. So that's pretty blue. So let me gray it down by adding touches of red to those puddles. I'm actually gonna maybe connect that little guy's shadow to his mama. So they come quite to a point out there. I kind of got that shape a little bit wrong, but I think it'll be all right. Okay, so that's kind of my first section. I can't do that because it's connected there. I can do this little shadow on the sidewalk. It's kind of the same color. So this is the side of the sidewalk. There, that's a little bit in shadow, so I'm mostly using blue and red. And I think I'm going to get out the blow dryer and dry everything off. Before I do that, I'm going to pull some of this excess water so it doesn't blow around too much. Maybe even lift off some highlights. In the flowers, I don't really care what they look like. Oh, I have this back section that's going to be pavement back here. So I'm going to make that kind of blue and indistinct back in there. And I can actually puddle around these flowers as long as I leave a little white edge. That'll give them some glow as well. So this is rocks. This is the sidewalk road in the background. So I'll just, but not as dark as in the foreground will be. And I'll leave a little white edge so all that rock doesn't get into the flowers too much. I do want to lift off a few highlights. Normally I wouldn't, especially around yellow, want to put that dark of a line underneath, but I might go ahead and do this area over here in sort of a brown tone. So it's mostly orangey side of brown, so I need mostly red and yellow. I'll just pull some of that blue down in there. And then this is pretty brown. I want to be careful about getting too close to my bird. So I'm going to leave a white edge around the bird. I can come back later and fix that. But I want to get a hint of that brown tone. So I'm leaving a white, dry, blocking border around the bird. And I do need a little more blue just to brown that down, create some shadows in the dirt. So this is shadows back in here. So I like puddle painting because everything is fresh and nice. It all mixes on the paper. So I'm going to stop this recording, dry it off, and I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so I noticed that I was kind of zoomed out a little far and you couldn't see what I was doing in the palette, but so I'm just using my warm blue, warm reds, and warm yellow. So the warm reds are quinacridone coral, and Pyrrole red. The warm blue is ultramarine blue, and the warm yellow is new gamboge. All right, so now I'm going to do this other little chick now that everything's dried off. I used the blow dryer to do that. So again, I'm going to start with the yellow, and I changed it up a little bit. Just these little guys are so camouflaged by nature, I guess they should be. So I put blue kind of behind it just to pop them a little bit more. So in the shadows, I purposely put blue behind this little chick so he would stand out a little better. So I'll put a little blue in there, but I started with kind of the orange tones, yellow and red, and then I'm just going to make him kind of an orange little guy to start with. Okay, then I'm going to come here and I'm going to start working this stone shape. And then I have a different photograph that I can't seem to find, but these same stones that are there are over in this area. So I'm just going to find some shadow shapes, and the light's kind of overhead but coming a little bit from the left. So I'm going to put shadows around some of these rocks using my red and blue. And this time I'm not going to puddle first, but I'm just going to get an indication of some rocks shapes over in there. And again, I'm going to try really hard not to make it too evenly spaced and have all the rocks the same size. And maybe sometimes I want the shadows to be a little bluer, and sometimes a little redder, and maybe even sometimes a little on the yellow side. So I've just kind of given myself some shadows. Now I'm going to clean off my brush and soften some edges and lift some highlights. So some of the rocks feel like they're lighter and in the sun. So the ultramarine blue lifts pretty easily. And I wish I could find the first painting of this as well as my photo reference. I can't seem to find it since my last workshop, or my last class. Anyway, so I'm just going to soften those shadows off, soften those edges off. So the Pyrrole red is a pretty staining color, and so is the yellow. But the ultramarine blue is quite lifting, so I should be able to get some highlights. But I don't want to have everything too distinct and obvious over there. I just kind of want to give the impression of river rock that is very common in Nevada. And that might have gotten a little too red in the shadows, so I'm just going to go over it with a little blue and just sort of hint at maybe some rock shapes. Maybe someone's coming out and overlapping in over the sidewalk. And if I want things to feel like they're closer to the viewer, so give the impression of 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional surface, I want to make things in the foreground darker and bigger than they would be in the background. So I think that's kind of looking like river rock over there that I've just kind of made up. Let's go ahead and put some of that quinacridone coral in there. There's some of the rocks are kind of a salmon-y color. And I don't want my little quinacridone coral to feel too isolated. If I warm it up in the front, it'll feel closer. Okay, then I'll continue that idea, but using thinner paint and softer edges over in here, because there's rocks all around these flowers. And then there's a sidewalk, and then there's the gray pavement in the very background, back in there where the cars go. So before I get too distracted, put some shadow shapes, especially in the foreground of these rocks. So now I can kind of go by there, and I'll put a little green down in here. So I'll create the green foliage base for the flowers. Start with blue, puddle in a little yellow. And again, I'm not trying to paint specific flowers. I'm just trying to get an impression of a yard with river rock and flower beds back in the distance. I want to keep all my edges pretty soft back here, so I'll lift off some highlights as well. Over in here I want to really try to do some lifting just where the light hit the rocks. Take that off the tape just so it's not distracting what I'm doing. So just a gentle scrub to the side and make sure they're not all pointing in the same direction. And then in the background, keep it all pretty soft. There's one little dark shadow that comes there. And then I'm gonna put in some pretty strong yellow. Not cover up all my puddled yellow, but just to give some dimension to these flowers so they're not all one value. Go ahead and put some blue in there. Maybe using kind of calligraphy strokes. Same thing in here. I'm going to get my red. This time I use the corally red because it's prettier than the Pyrrole red, to give myself a few shadow areas in these flowers so they're not all the same value. Go ahead and bring some of those down into the foliage. Okay, let's go ahead and do this sidewalk. I don't want it to be completely white, so I'm going to put in some wet across here. Maybe mess up my little shadows a little bit edgy, so they're not quite as edgy. As they are in the photograph. And then mostly a blue, just kind of quickly put that into the wet. It's red. Get some more blue out. Hinted that little separation there. Make it look like a sidewalk. There's actually a separation there as well. Get more blue and less red, and kind of hinted that little sidewalk edge. Just let that get a little stronger in the foreground than it looks like in the photograph, just so that it feels closer. Than the distance. We don't want to lose all the light either. Okay. I think I'll work on the bird a little bit, so I need a dark to just find some darks and make it kind of cute. So I'm going to find the eye shape. It's important to get the angle of the eye shape. And as it comes down the back side, I'm using mostly the blue and the red to get a dark. There's quite a shadow there if it comes down the neck. And then there's a shadow there as it comes off the eye. I gotta remember that my bird is bigger than the one in the photo. And I'm gonna get her dark plume. And a little bit of a crown up there without overdoing it. Get some shadow there. She comes around, get some darks in and around this feathering there. And then her tail is quite dark. I've gone and connected these two. I'm just going to lift off a little separation. And not sure I got that placement right. I think it comes down a bit, so it's too wet to work. So I can go back in with the dark, paint on top of it. I'm using the wrong paper actually to puddle, but it works. I just want to get a few hints of detail in the chicks, not too much. And get that little sense that he's stretching his legs, trying to catch up with Mama here. And Mama has a little shadow right there. Okay, I'm going to get some pretty dark color. So blue and red and yellow, that's kind of pre-mixed. And I'm going to come in and get some shadows on these leaves. Paint a few actual leaves. Especially around the edges. And then pull that in, soften those edges back. Just to give the sense of them being leaves. And here I'm going to save the lighter areas and paint the dark. And skew my dark a little more to the orange side. Get a good dirt shadow and just drop in some dirt shadows there. Kind of give the effect of dappled light a little bit at the bottom edge. While that's wet, I'm going to puddle in a little blue. Find some leaf shapes at the edges, just poking around. It's a little too browny. I'm going to put some more blue into those shapes. Okay, I'm going to be really careful and pop out my chick by painting around a chick. Hopefully that works. I'm not sure. And I'm going to go ahead and put this shadow, connect it right to the bird. I did get a little bit of a wrong angle on that neck, so just gonna fade it back a little bit. Put a little blue in these flowers up in here, just to give them a little bit of dimension. And in the foliage, find some rocks. Soften it back. Got a lot of weeds growing in there, the rocks. We'll hint at that. Hint at some rocks back in there. Mess it up a little bit. Keep it really indistinct and bluer in the distance. Soften that off. Yeah, I think I like this. Get this too warm over here. I think I want it to be cooler. After all, I don't think I'll put too much detail in there. Maybe just a little bit of a sense of light and shadow. Not too much, because I like the color showing through. Go ahead and connect this. Leaves coming down. Find the edge of the sidewalk over here in some places. Put a rock overlapping. I think I'm going to lift off the breast of this bird, soften that dark as it comes around. I was kind of killing time while the bird dried. I'm going to try again with her eyeball. A little better. And then I'm going to get out a knife, sharp knife, to scratch back some whites. keep the overall shape of this feather pattern here. And I'm going to scratch back, highlight back there because I got the shape of that neck wrong. You don't want to do anything after you've scratched, on the areas after you've scratched, because it does rough up the paper. And then let's go ahead and get this highlight here on the tail. Kind of rushing this painting redo because you have to stop soon and get to class. Excuse me. So just using the tip, trying to find eyeballs and just a little bit of detail on these little guys. They do have a tiny bit of a plume already. I don't know. I don't like my shadow here. I'm going to lift it back a little bit. So the blue will lift quite nicely. The red kind of stains, but I just don't want the shadows. I find they're distracting from the image, so I'm just going to knock them back a bit. So I'm gonna sign it, and this will be the demo video, and hopefully I'll be able to find the other painting at some point, which may have been cuter, I don't know. So I'll go ahead and sign it here just for balance. I like to use my liner. And then sort of knock it back while it's still wet, just a little bit. That is the painting demo for the final week. I decided I want to just soften some of these darks on the back of this head. But it's nice and dry. Give it more of a subtlety. And then I want to get some of this orangey murk and paint the little feeties on all the birds. It's so small you almost just want to put bits and dots. And mommas have started to gray a bit, but I just don't really like how that head turned out, but So I'm gonna soften that back just a bit with the water and then put some orange on the top of the beaks. And then knock it back a bit. Just a hint. Kind of cute. Then I also want to see if I can erase back some of these pencil marks just a bit so they're not quite so dark. I don't want to spill my water in the process, so it's a little better. It's the only place they were really bothering me. And then before I try to erase here on the chicks, I'll dry it off. Okay, calling it done. I'm going to zoom in this time and get a good look at the painting a little closer up.